Intrigued by the ups and downs of the business, Duncan grew his new company into the #1 producer of yo-yos for the next 35 years. He eventually claimed 85% of the entire U.S. market. Duncan's early success was due in large part to his ability to really push on the publicity. He convinced the biggest newspaper magnate of the early 20th century to use yo-yo contests to stimulate his circulation. A single promotion in Philadelphia sold 3 million yo-yos in 30 days. How many of you guys have done that? Maybe somebody. Donald Duncan Sr. passed away in 1971, and I'm full of tragic news. His son Don Jr., the last living member of the Duncan yo-yo family, was killed in a car accident in 2003. I guess that is not more than that for a pause. W.R. Solly and his brother Ed, co-founders of Flambeau Products Corporation, were contracted by the Duncan family to make plastic yo-yos. The brothers eventually purchased the Duncan name from Duncan Toys and formed the Duncan Toys division of Flambeau. They provided a short video in honor of tonight's first honoree, and we're going to watch it.
The history of Duncan is really an incredible history, how dominant it has been and how dominant it still remains. And yes, they are vital to keeping the yo-yo movement going. He was a marketing genius. And what he did was, and this was in the very, very early 30s, William Randolph Hearst controlled the majority of newspapers in the United States, and Duncan went in and said, listen, I have an idea for increasing your subscriptions to your newspapers. And so what Duncan proposed was, in the newspapers, they have a lot of white space where they just don't have enough stuff to fill the newspaper, so they just throw in the, gimmicky articles about something just to fill it. He says, you give me the white space to advertise my yo-yo contest, and what we'll do is we'll say to enter the yo-yo contest, the person that enters has to sell 2 to 3 subscriptions to your newspaper. And the one kid that actually had money was the newspaper boys. And here was the newspaper running the contest, and there were big prizes involved, and Hearst gave Duncan Chicago. Well, in a 6-week period, they sold 50,000 new subscriptions to that newspaper. And Hearst says, that's it. This is a brilliant idea. You've got all my newspapers. And so that just gave Duncan market dominance over everybody else. And from that point on, Duncan has, of course, pretty much dominated the yo-yo industry.
So we went to Chicago and met Donald F. Duncan and found him to be the most wonderful guy.
And he went down there, and he said he was in a group of young children, and he walked up to this one little boy, a little freckle-faced boy, he said, and he asked him, what kind of yo-yo you got there? And the little boy said, a Duncan, what else?
I was driving to a contest spot, and I couldn't get close. And when I got there, there was probably close to 2,000 people there.
The crowds you wouldn't believe. We would have to have, for a contest, we'd have to have police escorts to get the crowd back enough so that we could get a contest going.
For over 80 years, Duncan's heritage of the traveling demonstrator is still very much alive. And from the beginning, their demonstrators have been world-class yo-yo players. From the old school to the new school, it's really an honor to be a part of such a rich history.
Duncan has done a great job of being innovative, and it's that innovation and all that, that's what is driving the market now. And we've seen some of the companies that have come up that I thought were going to be major competitors against them, and when the dust settles, there's Duncan.
The Solly family is the strongest known connection to the Duncan family. And we are pleased to have Jason Sawyer, President and CEO of Flambeau Products, here tonight to accept this Hall of Fame award on behalf of the Duncan family and to celebrate the life of an industry icon. Jason?
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you to the Toy Industry Association and the Toy Industry Foundation for this fine evening, and thank you also for this very proper and fitting recognition and honor bestowed upon Donald Duncan and to his admittance into the Toy Industry Hall of Fame. In keeping with the apparent theme that was established at the outset of this evening by Jamie Gallagher, I have to confess that I began this afternoon by flying here from Cleveland. It wasn't that bad. And Andrea, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to ask Donald Duncan if he would like to be here tonight. In our company, I have a way of relating occasionally to the great Greek philosophers, and I do think back upon how we might learn from them from time to time. And I have quoted Aristotle occasionally, and he has this one quote where he said that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is a habit, not an act. And I think that Donald Duncan is very deserving of this admittance into the Toy Industry Hall of Fame because he repeatedly demonstrated excellence throughout his career. And he achieved it by changing his patterns, his behaviors, and what he needed to do to make things happen in the marketplace under times of changing conditions. Donald Duncan was an entrepreneur. He was a toy industry pioneer. He was a promoter extraordinaire. And he was a leader in every facet of his business. He had remarkable ingenuity and creativity, but matching that, he also had tremendous adaptability. He changed when times required them to change. For promotions, for instance, you heard how he worked his original promotions during the Depression era with the newspapers, and he would augment those efforts with in-store and schoolyard demonstrations. I think that at the time, that was probably as close as it came to a totally integrated marketing campaign. But as things progressed and technology moved forward, Donald Duncan was among the first to advertise and spot on national television as well. And I have confidence that if he were alive today, he would be very comfortable with web marketing, social networking, and QR codes. For product, at the time, Donald Duncan had only fixed axle yo-yos made out of hardwoods. His innovation was to loop the string around the axle, thereby allowing the yo-yo to spin at the end of the string and enabling performers to perform more complicated tricks. He also moved on to be one of the first to make yo-yos out of plastic. While those in today's terms might not be considered great innovations, I know that Donald Duncan would be at the forefront if he were alive today, using composite materials, aircraft aluminum, and ball bearings, and response systems of all types. So he absolutely was a man who could innovate and adapt. And those are gifts that we could all benefit from. Today, Duncan remains one of the oldest independent toy brands in America. We continue to build on the iconic and enduring legacy Donald Duncan left behind. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for all of us at Duncan to carry the Duncan brand, a treasured piece of Americana, forward into the current day and the future. Donald Duncan took one of the world's oldest toys and made it appealing and fun to kids of all ages. I still frequently come across octogenarians who very enthusiastically tell me their stories about how they were at one time Duncan yo-yo champions. The yo-yo is a timeless, cross-cultural, cross-generational toy that transcends artificial barriers to make connections with people It has arguably the greatest play value toy per dollar spent. Donald Duncan knew this and used his genius to make connections with people and brighten the lives of kids of all ages everywhere. Thank you again to the Toy Industry Association and the Toy Industry Foundation for honoring Donald Duncan in this fashion. As I said earlier, it's very fitting. We could all use more Donald Duncans in this industry, in every industry, to transcend artificial barriers, to make connections with people, and to brighten the lives of children everywhere. Now, Brandon and Takeshi, let's amp it up a little bit for them. We've been going all night. They'll be here for your viewing pleasure later if you'd like to see them some more. But thank you again.